According to ancient Greek myth, before time began, there was only Mother Earth and Father Sky, Gaia and Uranus. Uranus and Gaia were married, and she bore him thousands of children. These children were giants known as the Titans. The first three were hideous giants. The next were the Cyclops brothers. Each Cyclops had a huge eye in the middle of their forehead. One big eye. Gaia gave birth to a great multitude rapidly. The next few hundred children were all monsters like the first six, but each new generation of kids that she bore became less and less hideous in appearance. Her youngest son was Cronus, and even though he was a giant, he looked like a regular human being. Now, Uranus was repulsed by the older children and feared them for their ghastly appearance, so he hid them in various nooks and crannies of the earth, so he would never have to gaze upon them. The younger children, he was better to them, but he was still never going to receive a Father of the Year award for his treatment of them. He found them to be a threat, but useful. Gaia, like any good mother, loved her ugly children just as much as she loved her beautiful children, and was appalled by her husband's treatment of them. She trained Cronus in the hopes that he would become a great warrior, capable of defeating and overthrowing his father. Luckily for Gaia, Cronus was a very fast learner. One night, Cronus hid behind a curtain in his parents' bedchamber. He waited for his fearsome father to fall asleep before coming out with a sickle and castrating him. This event is commemorated each and every New Year. The old man with the sickle and the baby. Uranus awoke, totally weak and emasculated. Cronus cast him down into the deepest, darkest recesses of Tartarus, the underworld. Cronus was now Mr. Big Shot. He called himself Father Time, and it's from his name that we get words like chronological. So his reign is the beginning of time. Now at first, all of his siblings and their children were overjoyed, thinking that they would all get to share in the glory with him. But they were sadly mistaken. The hideous giant children that Uranus had found so grotesque that he never wanted to gaze upon them, who were locked in the deepest bowels of the earth, they remained there. Meanwhile, Cronus had some rather unpleasant jobs lined up for the Titans who had remained free for all these years. His nephew Atlas was given the rather unpleasant job of holding the sky up on his shoulders for all time. One who was spared, however, was Prometheus. No one knows for sure why he was spared. Prometheus amused himself by making little statues of clay. One day he discovered he had an amazing gift. He was able to breathe life into these clay figures. This is how he made the first animals, and eventually his favorite creation, human beings. And savage though he was, Father Time loved humankind and doted on them as if he were the greatest father who ever lived. For a while he even locked death in a cave as a captive, so that mankind could enjoy immortality. But Cronus was not so kind to his own children. He feared that he would one day have a son who would overthrow him the way he overthrew his own father. So every time his wife gave birth, he would swallow the newborn baby whole. He swallowed the first 5 of his children this way. When Cronus' wife gave birth to their 6th child, Zeus, she took a huge rock and wrapped it in swaddling bands before presenting it to her husband as their new baby. And he took it and swallowed it whole, having no clue that he'd been duped. Baby Zeus was then given to a couple of women Prometheus had created, and they raised him into adulthood. And when he came of age, Gaia and his mother told Zeus who he was and what his destiny was. It was to overthrow his father. Cronus' wife gave him a very special drink designed to make him sick. Within minutes of consuming the brew, he threw up the 5 children he had swallowed, but now they were fully grown adults. They were Hades, Demeter, Hestia, Poseidon, and Hera. The war between the gods lasted non-stop for 10 years with no clear victor in sight. One would think that someone as ungrateful as Cronus wouldn't have had any friends. but some of the Titans did fight alongside him, for fear of losing their illustrious positions should these new upstart gods and goddesses decide to replace them. Hey, what can I say? Politics make strange bedfellows. Zeus went to his uncle Prometheus for advice. Prometheus recommended, "Go down into Tartarus and free the Titans imprisoned there." And so Zeus did just that. He freed all the hideous creatures that Uranus had imprisoned so many years before. And Cronus was defeated. Now, according to the Romans, Cronus went to Italy, where he went by the name of Saturn, and he brought with him Italy's golden age. Peace and harmony were the norm in Italy for as long as Saturn reigned there. Now, whereas Zeus had to prove his worth on the battlefield to become king of the Greek gods, the Norse god Odin had to prove himself worthy intellectually to be crowned king. Now, this may seem strange when one considers the reputation Vikings have for being warmongers. The Norse gods were first worshipped by the Dutch, Gaelic, and Germanic barbarians. And despite the name, these barbarians were far less barbaric than the Vikings. Very much the way the ancient Romans would eventually appropriate the religion of the ancient Greeks. Odin went down various branches on the Tree of Life. In Norse myth, the Tree of Life is this giant tree in the middle of the universe, and the 10 different realms are on each branch of the tree. You have the realm of the gods, the realm of the giants, the realm of the elves, and at the bottom of the tree is the realm of the dead. So, Odin visited these different branches, learning everything he could on each branch. When he reached the underworld, he wanted the ability to see into the future. But the fates told him if he wanted to see into the future, he would have to pay a price. He had to give them his left eye. And so he let them rip out his eye, and then he was able to see into the future, and he was now worthy to rule the gods. His mission was accomplished, though his visions of the future were anything but sunny and happy. One of the visions Odin saw was the end of the world, or at least the world as he knew it. He saw that one day one of the evil fire giants would set the Tree of Life ablaze. Odin decided that his chief responsibility was to put off the end of times for as long as he possibly could. The fire giants throughout history have always been declaring war on the gods, and it seems the gods have been putting up a pretty darn good fight all these years. In Judeo-Christian tradition, God created the angels to live with him in heaven. The most beautiful of his angels was Lucifer, which means morning star. In the Islamic world, Lucifer is known by the name Iblis. The major problem for Iblis was that he loved God too much, and none of the heavenly beings could see the danger in this. I mean, how can loving God too much be a problem? According to the Quran, after a long period of peace and harmony, God decided to create the first humans. God commanded the angels of heaven to come down to the Garden of Eden and bow before his newest creation. This is where he gave the first man and woman eternal life. Iblis was appalled by the very idea of bowing down to a creature as lowly as mankind. He would only bow to God and no one else. "I have created them," God said. "Therefore my light emanates in them, and they are divine." But Iblis refused to recognize man's divinity. Soon some of the other angels decided Iblis was right. The dissidents flew back to heaven. While waiting for God's return, Iblis became quite proud of the love he had shown for the Almighty. And the more he thought about this, the more his head swelled with pride. When God returned, Iblis greeted him. "My master, have you now seen that I am truly your greatest angel, for I was first to recognize man as a creature not worth our attention. I have become truly divine." But God was furious, and a civil war broke out. It lasted only minutes as Iblis and his fellow fallen angels were driven out of heaven by Michael and the other archangels. In his despair, having been separated from a god he loved, Iblis's dismissive attitude towards mankind grew more bitter. Every hour of every day, his hatred for humankind grows. His desire to see man fall grows greater and greater. And so, he and his minions now roam the earth with one mission, and one mission alone: to prove God wrong, to prove that mortals have none of the Creator's light in them. This is why we need to remember when dealing with our foes that they are each God's children just as much as we are. His love for each of us is equal, just as Gaia's love for her ugly children was equal to the love that she had for her beautiful children. In each of us there is a light. Sometimes the light is hard to see, for we are like diamonds. We can lose our sparkle as we become cloudy or encased with dust, but we can always be cleansed like new again.